all weighed in and ready to go. Unified heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua and his WBO mandatory Oleksandr Usyk ready for their showdown at the Spurs Stadium in London. Heading the scales ahead of that fight, Joshua 240 pounds even, Usyk 221. So these weights, a few different interesting points coming out of this, and it also dispels a few things that had been flying around or concerns that some fans had. So we'll start with the champion first, Anthony Joshua. 240 pounds, it's about 3/4 of a pound less than his last fight against Kubrat Pulev at the end of 2020, but about 3 pounds heavier than his rematch with Andy Ruiz Jr. at the end of 2019. So what this tells me is that Joshua is looking for that elusive mix of speed and power. He wants to be able to be mobile, agile, nimble. He's going to have a guy in front of him who can box and move and do that at a very adept and elite level. So he wants to be able to use the ring when he needs to and to be able to get in and out of the positions that he wants to be in. So I know that some people had worried that Joshua was getting too lean, that he was maybe playing too much into Oleksandr Usyk's hands here, that maybe he would come in too light. But I think he's hit about what is a very good weight for him. And we've seen before when he's been around this weight, say the Joseph Parker fight, he was 242. He could actually box and move, and he still had that power in his locker. So don't expect that he's given something away or diminished. I mean, I know some people were sort of shroud waving a little bit, talking about the weight loss, that sort of stuff. Look, he's basically at the same fight weight that he was for the past 2 years. So within, 3/4 of a pound of the last fight and 3 pounds of the previous fight. So, I mean, let's not get crazy here and say that he's been shredding himself, something ridiculous and something that we haven't seen before. They have prepared accordingly. They know what they want to do against Usyk, and they've managed to hit the weight that they want to weigh in at. So I think he is going for the elusive mix of speed and power, and I think it's a good weight for him. I know some people say, he should be a bit more heavy, he should be able to put it on Usyk, etc., try to blast him out of there. It's not going to be that sort of fight. This, I think, is going to be more of a chess match, especially in the early going. Anthony Joshua, not necessarily a fast starter himself, especially in more recent fights, but he's going to be wary of what's in front of him, because Oleksandr Usyk, while not a big power puncher, very tricky customer. With his boxing, his movement, and it's a different, style for Joshua, especially the southpaw element. Joshua is going to want to get a good look. And recent sort of fights, especially in the last 5 years, show that Joshua isn't getting early knockouts. So I would be surprised if this ended early. I think this really does have, later in the fight written all over it, either for a stoppage or going the distance. So don't be surprised if this does go to points and that this is going to be quite a tough night, and potentially with the way that these guys fight, everything that's on the line here, that it could be more of a tactical battle rather than some sort of shootout. Don't expect some sort of war. Usyk, meanwhile, 221 pounds on the scale. So this is kind of about where I thought he would weigh in. I know some people had been expecting that he'd be 230 or heavier, and that was based off, some earlier postings on social media from a couple of months ago as he was entering camp. He showed the world he was 231 pounds on the scale, but that was obviously early or at the start of camp, and through his, grueling, rigorous preparations, he's basically whipped himself into better condition, fight shape. So this is about where I think that for his career at heavyweight is about the sort of optimum, that I think going much heavier than this, he starts to give up his advantages, which against bigger heavyweights that can often be slower and a bit more lumbering, Usyk's advantages is going to be in his foot speed, his hand speed, just his general sort of quickness in the ring, the ability to get in and out quickly. And if he was going to come in heavier, around 230 pounds or so, or even higher, I think he's giving that up and making himself more vulnerable, more hittable. So I think also they've come to a plan, and this is where they've intended to, there or thereabouts, weigh in, just like Joshua. So it's clear to me that both these guys have hit where they wanted to hit, and they're in tip-top condition. So we should have no excuses. It's going to be a good fight. It really is one of the best fights of the year so far. It's been a pretty lean year in the heavyweight division. Absolute garbage so far. We've had very few good fights to look forward to, very few good fights that have happened. You've had that rematch between White and Povetkin, with Povetkin being completely shot. You've had Parker and Chisora, a fight people didn't really call for but got anyway. And elsewhere, there really just hasn't been much of note. So it's really good to see we've got a good competitive fight. Many variables that could sort of influence how this pans out. And it could end up being, I think, a more sort of tense, intriguing sort of fight that's probably not going to sort of just break out into some sort of sparkling shootout sort of war, that sort of stuff. I think it is going to be a tactical battle, and ultimately it's going to go deep. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.